This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, July 28th, and this is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Zimbabwe's ruling Zanu-PF party is threatening to expel the United States Ambassador Brian Nichols, accusing him of undermining the country's laws. Minus any proof, the party's acting spokesperson Patrick Chinamasa told reporters in Harare if Nichols continues engaging in acts such as supporting disturbances, coordinating violence, and training insurgency, the party's leadership will not hesitate to boot him out of the country. Chinamasa's comments suggest the U.S. supports Friday's planned protest by opposition groups calling for more economic parity, less government corruption, and the resignation of President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The U.S. Embassy in Harare has not responded to Chinamasa's comments. Wide-scale testing is underway in the United States on 2 potential COVID-19 vaccines to determine their safety and effectiveness. The first dose of an experimental vaccine manufactured by U.S.-based biotech firm Moderna and developed by researchers at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases was given to a volunteer in Savannah, Georgia. The person is the first of 30,000 healthy people nationwide who will receive 2 doses of the vaccine over the next several weeks in a late-stage phase of the study to see whether people get infected or sick from coronavirus. If the trial is successful, Moderna will produce 500 million doses a year with the hopes of making 1 billion doses annually beginning in 2021. The second experimental vaccine made by US-based Pfizer in collaboration with Germany-based BioNTech will also be given to 30,000 people across the United States, Brazil, Argentina, and Germany. More than 16.4 million infections are being reported worldwide, including over 654,000 deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University. Turning to Africa, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta is extending a nightly curfew for 30 days to curb the spread of COVID-19, and he's banned alcohol sales in restaurants, but stopped short of locking down the country again despite a surge in coronavirus infections. Kenya is reporting nearly 18,000 infections and 285 deaths from COVID-19, according to Johns Hopkins University data. Kenya's Ministry of Health says the number of mental health cases have jumped dramatically during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the country's mental health task force, 25% of coronavirus outpatients and 40% of in-hospital patients suffer from mental health issues such as depression. But more Kenyans are seeking help and speaking up. Mohammed Yusuf reports.
Sheila Orono is meeting her counselor to get help for a mental health problem that has grown worsen in recent months.
I just wanted to be alone. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to do anything. But now I've gone back to my normal self. I can do something. I can even listen to a music. Like the normal me has come back. I was heading to. But now with the therapy sessions and the need for me to come out and say that I'm suffering from bipolar, like a mental illness.
This small center in Nakuru County receives several patients suffering from different mental health issues.
And just helping them to have psychological resilience, to realize that even during this moment, during the pandemic, where there are chances of heightened depression, that it doesn't mean that it's a season that will be there forever, but then during this process they can have what we call psychological resilience for them to be able to cope and understand that they can still bounce back.
The World Health Organization defines mental health as a well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities and can cope with the normal stresses of life. This mother of three suffered COVID-19-like symptoms in March. After a few days, she was picked up by health workers dressed in protective gear.
You can see some 1, 2, 3 people understand you and talk to you or associates with you, but there are those who are so illiterate, who don't believe that you can be healed.
Frank Njenga says many Kenyans suffer mental illness without knowing it.
If you look at a family with 5 people, 2 parents and 3 children, at one point or another, one of them, at one point or another in their lives, will suffer from a mental illness of one sort or another. In other words, 20% of Kenyans, whether we like it or not, will at one point or another have a mental health need.
With the pandemic taking a toll on people's mental state, the Kenyan government is urging its citizens to seek help if they need it at this trying time. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Nakuru, Kenya.
As the COVID-19 pandemic continues, enforced isolation, social distancing, and other issues are taking their toll in terms of stress. VOA's Jeff Swicord profiles a Washington, D.C. mental health therapist who offers some advice on self-care.
I wanted to be a therapist when I started going to college. I thought I was going to be a teacher. And then I took Psychology 101, and I really got fascinated by wanting to learn about people and how they work and why they do and say the things that they do. I think I've always been someone that people go to as a sounding board, as like a helper, and I really enjoy it. So there wasn't anything that specifically happened, but just that made me, I've always wanted to help people. Everybody's working from home and getting to spend more time with their family. And the commute time that people used to have for work to decompress and to be able to just unplug and get away from all the stimulation is lost during the pandemic. And so people were experiencing a lot of stress, anxiety, a lot of difficulty trying to set routines in their life again. It's really helpful for people to set a routine in their life. Just like when they were working, they had a routine. They would wake up at a specific time, exercise at a specific time, eat dinner at a specific time. All of those things, trying to recreate that. Also creating time where you're not thinking or talking about the pandemic or stress or anything negative for yourself and for your relationship, I think is really helpful. So the stage that everyone's in now is, where do you go that's safe for me and for my partner or whoever I'm living with? If people want to come into my home, you know, who should I allow, and should I wear a mask, shouldn't I wear a mask? Is the news accurate, and what to listen to? And so now that anxiety is ramping up. And so trying to find little pockets of what you can do to keep yourself in control of, whether it be your mind and your body, so breathing and things like that. But then also switching gears and training the brain on how to think of what you can do instead of what you can't do. In your immediate future, in your life, in the moment. There's a lot of financial anxiety right now. People that have lost their job, or who are being furloughed, or who are being laid off. The biggest thing is being patient, understanding that we are going through a really traumatic time and a crisis, and also looking at the positives. A lot of people are looking at, okay, so I'm not getting a job, let's look at why that is a good thing right now. I can have more time with my family, I'll never get, hopefully never get this time again. And so trying to be grateful and appreciating all the small things.
The coronavirus pandemic has forced small businesses around the world to come up with new ways to cope with a new reality, including using technology to stay afloat. VOA correspondent Mariama Diallo reports.
As a car dealership in North Dakota, Reynard Bergstrom says he could have cut costs in the wake of the pandemic by reducing his staff. Instead, he thought outside the box to keep his team employed.
When the pandemic first hit, we got together a team of 7 people. It was 6 people on site, and then Rhonda was on the team as well.
Rhonda Laws is a virtual assistant. Hired to work off-site, she manages everything from clients to the dealership's day-to-day needs.
COVID-19 situation is something that we started earlier than that, trying to take some of the workload that can be done remotely off of some of the people here, where Rhonda being off-site could focus on some of the behind-the-scenes things that needed to be done, the policies that needed to be drafted, and some of the research on what we needed for equipment and cleaning supplies and those types of things.
Bergstrom says because Laws has expanded some projects, he might even need to hire another virtual assistant to manage the workload.
I've seen a lot of people around me losing their jobs and getting laid off, but I think that will start moving more toward virtual in a lot of ways, just in business in general.
Bergstrom cars were started almost 100 years ago by Reynard's grandfather. Despite the pandemic, he says he's confident the company will remain strong because they've learned to adapt quickly. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
Experts agree that until there's an effective vaccine against the coronavirus, the best countermeasures remain social distancing, masks, and frequent hand washing. Early detection can help control the spread. And as VOA's Arasha Basadi reports, German troops are already training their 4-legged counterparts.
Recently at this academy in Ulm, Germany, Army trainers tested a new weapon in the fight against the coronavirus. German Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer says this dog training program is a first of its kind.
The school is unique for the military, but even in an international context, it is a special asset that we can offer. Here it is not just people being trained at school, but dogs and people training side by side.
The dogs can't sniff out the actual virus, but they can detect the biochemical changes it causes in saliva. These dogs produce results with samples as small as 100 microliters.
To put it simply, we're investigating whether service dogs can be used to detect COVID-19. Not because they can smell the virus itself, but they can smell the biochemical processes and the changes caused by the virus.
Kramp-Karrenbauer says while tests are encouraging, studies remain ongoing.
I want to make clear here the next steps, like, for example, differentiating between coronavirus and influenza, or to differentiate an active carrier are all questions to be answered. And so we'll need more months to be able to offer up clear results.
Military dog trainers and the Hanover University of Veterinary Medicine are currently working with a variety of breeds on a rewards-based system where dogs get treats for properly identifying tainted saliva. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
Coming up, a boost for Nigerian entrepreneurs as government promises to fund micro, small, and medium enterprises. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Lynn Ormoudou, your VOA Health correspondent. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization says there are currently no drugs licensed for the treatment or prevention of COVID-19, and there is no proof that hydroxychloroquine or any other drug can cure or prevent coronavirus. The misuse of hydroxychloroquine can cause serious side effects, illness, and even lead to death. For more information on COVID-19, visit who.int or contact your local or national health authorities.
The recent death of popular Ethiopian musician Hacaaluu Hundessa has heightened ethnic tensions in the nation. It sparked violent demonstrations around Addis Ababa, which quickly spread to the Oromia region, where Hundessa was born. At least 160 people died. Africa 54's managing editor Vincent Makori spoke with Bileni Seyum, the spokesperson for Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. In part 2 of his conversation with Seyum, she responds to accusations that the government is still using old repressive tactics, including the arrests and disappearance of government critics.
So Vincent, at my level, I can't give you the detailed accounts of each individuals. There are suspects that have been apprehended in connection to threats against the constitutional order and internal state security. But these details are being communicated frequently by the Attorney General's office as well as the federal police as well. So those details are something that are being handled by them and are being communicated quite openly and frankly.
And for those who, parents and relatives who say their children have been missing, it's young students who are abducted, believed to have been abducted by government forces, what is your answer to them?
I don't think there is any connection to government forces, and I don't think there's any reports connecting them to abduction by government forces. The government has, through the parliamentary address that the Prime Minister has made recently, as well as on previous occasions, has given adequate response to that. So this is still an ongoing investigation. The government has committed itself to ensuring that if there is, these cases are actually in reality, that the government is taking all the necessary measures and information gathering to ensure that they are reunited with their families.
Now, the Oromia region protests have been going on for a long time. They've been sustained. Many would want to know, what are their demands? And what is the government doing to resolve or to meet some of those demands so that at least things can start changing?
So the demands by political parties, and it's not only political parties of one group, because again, this is part of the background and understanding the context and really referring back to the context instead of just looking at it in very narrowed event-based and incident-based scenarios. But as I had mentioned to you earlier, the government, part of the reforms, critical part of the foundation of the reforms has been to open up the political space to engage or to invite all of these political parties to come and engage in a peaceful struggle. And it's not only inviting them to come and engage, but the Prime Minister, as well as his administration, have created various platforms over the span of 2.5 years to have a roundtable discussion. So there's been many forums. A lot of the political parties have been invited to these forums to provide their ideas, to provide their policy options, to provide their arguments on what is being laid out. Very recently as well, when the health state of emergency was also enacted, this is something that the government also invited and engaged political parties. But one thing that I want to underscore is what the government is doing to address all of these grievances that have accumulated over Ethiopia's long political history, that have been suppressed over the past 20-something years. The expectation of everything being addressed within a short 2.5 years, where there is a lack of institutions, inherited lack of institutions, that the government is still laying the foundation for establishing and strengthening institutions is unrealistic. But they're part of the process and they're engaged in the process, and there is that open will to engage in a constructive manner with policy options, because what the Ethiopian people need right now is not a political struggle, but what they're looking for is the path, a clear path to their prosperity and their development. And all actors are being asked to constructively engage in this path.
Now, as a journalist, I have to ask this. We have also been reporting about Yeswe Shimelis, who's a journalist, and also there's this other missing journalist. There's actually a Kenyan, Yasim Juma. Would you tell us something about that?
As I was mentioning to you earlier as well, Vincent, I don't have a list of these individuals, but like I said, this is something as part of ongoing investigations, because this incident just happened very recently. There are people that have been apprehended in connection to that. There's still a lot of investigations that are going and more people that are being apprehended in connection with three elements. The three elements of apprehending suspects is happening at the level of those who killed Hacaalu. The second one, those who were linked to the unlawful hijacking of his body and creating disruption and chaos around that, as well as media incitement of hate speech. And then the third aspect is those that have also been involved in the destruction of lives and property throughout the protests that we're calling the protests and the riots. So the federal police and the Attorney General are the ones that are mandated to investigate and put forth some of the details that you're asking me in this front.
That was Africa 54 managing editor Vincent Makori speaking with Bileni Seyum, spokesperson for Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The June 29th murder of Ethiopia singer Hacaalu Hundessa sparked demonstrations across Addis Ababa and other cities. In the violence that followed, more than 100 people died and many more were arrested. Africa 54's managing editor Vincent Makori spoke with Henok Gabisa, co-chair International Oromo Lawyers Association, and asked him why Haacaalu's death ignited the massive protests.
When this giant individual was gunned down, he deserves a national and state send-off. He deserves a respect that any other individuals had received in that country. He was not given that. His fans, his admirers, and his people were not allowed to even express their grief peacefully and with respect. That did not happen. So that brings us back to understand how was the investigation of this kind of crime was taking place. There was
about the investigation, the government said that some people had been arrested and there were confessions actually. So that means the government swung into action quickly, and there seemed to be a sense of, justice, hope for, at least for justice, right?
Confession, especially in countries like Ethiopia, where forced coercion is the tradition, cannot be a reliable source of evidence, one. Two, there is a forensic element to what happened. You need a crime scene, you need elements of the crime that took place, where it took place. The government had to reconstruct the crime scene to get to the reality and the truth. That did not happen. The bullet, the firing of the gun, we do not have detailed crime scene information. There was no transparency in communicating to the people. The car in which the Hacaalu was supposedly killed was automatically taken off from the crime scene, was dismissed, and nobody knew about it. Now, what we know is that the Attorney General came out in something that looks like staged pressing brief, where she made 3 different types of error in speaking about the name of the suspects. They gave a different name in the first place, and after a week of briefing, they gave a different kind of suspect, right? So this sheds a lot of questions and light on how real and honest and genuine the investigation process is.
Mm-hmm. Now, there have been accusations from your side and other citizens that so many people have been arrested and, in fact, some disappeared, including young people, university students. The government says it does not abduct people. It does not disappear people. But, of course, there are people who have been arrested for legitimate reasons, for causing, chaos or acting in criminal ways. So how plausible is your accusation that actually some people have been arrested and disappeared and nobody knows their whereabouts?
That's credible report that we have. So the Prime Minister, when he came to power, he said, we will not arrest anyone without verifying, without a probable cause. Guess how many people are in jail now? How many Oromo youths are in jail? Only from the last 2 weeks, 7,000. And there is no way 7,000 Oromo youths, just because they have an Oromo accent and an Oromo name, have involved in any kind of violence.
The question of internet, the government says that it does not have any intention of using the same tactics from the previous regime, but at this time and in certain times, at certain times, it's critically important to block or restrict internet because it can be used sometimes for very destructive activities.
The same way there are forces who use internet to call for violence, there are also forces like us who use internet to call for peace. So, in this case, the government lacked competent leadership. The government lacked knowledge and skill of how to transfer and translate the existence of internet infrastructure for a good cause. The automatic thing that comes to their mind is shutting on and off. That would not resolve the problem that had been lingering around for a long period of time.
That was Africa 54's managing editor Vincent Makori speaking with Henok Gabisa, co-chair, International Oromo Lawyers Association. The federal government of Nigeria is reaffirming its support for entrepreneurs who play a pivotal role in the country's economy. Speaking at a virtual meeting, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says the government plans to provide $515 million funding for micro, small, and medium enterprises in health, agro-processing, and the aviation sector. We get more in this report from Sarah Wakili of Channels TV in Nigeria.
It's the third MSME Award, an occasion which usually brings together owners of medium and small enterprises to celebrate their achievement and contribution to the nation's economy. Unlike previous awards, this year's award is holding through a virtual meeting, no thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo expresses his delight at rewarding outstanding MSMEs as they represent remarkable examples of Nigerian entrepreneurship, creativity and innovation, adding that the government will continue to show them support even in the face of dwindling resources as a result of the global pandemic.
We have a 200 billion fund, which is going to be made available to MSMEs in the priority sectors, such as healthcare, agro-processing, the creative industry, local oil and gas, aviation, etc. This will be granted through a scheme to be jointly run by the BOI and Nexim Bank, especially for export expansion.
While statistics shows that there are over 35 million small and medium enterprises in the country, 30% of them are projected to fold up due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But government officials are happy to see them thrive and creating jobs and wealth.
Around the world, the COVID challenge is scaring about small scale, but here is our able Vice President promoting and expressing confidence, and indeed the President, that the MSME sector is a sector to reckon with, and we believe will contribute to the emergence of Nigeria into a stronger nation.
Evidently plays a pivotal role in stimulating economic growth and providing employment to vulnerable groups such as the youth, women, and the poor. Therefore, this forms the basis for the commitment and sustained interest by the federal government of Nigeria in repositioning the sector.
And then the awards. Over 8 categories of businesses received cash prizes of either 1 million naira or 500,000 naira, as well as car gifts. This, according to the organizers of the award, is to spur other entrepreneurs to contribute their quota to national development.
That report was filed by Sarah Wakili of Channels Television in Nigeria. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.